Oh, okay, cool. Well, welcome everybody to our panel. My name is Nathan Morelli. I'm the moderator for the session. My day job is as head of cybersecurity and IT resilience for SA Power Networks, and we are the sole distributor of energy for the state of South Australia in the country of Australia. Today, we have a panel today focusing on the topic of adopting a prevention-first approach to security within critical infrastructure organisations. And for me, the topic very timely and very pertinent to the way we're building our cybersecurity strategy and managing our cybersecurity risk at SA Power Networks. And we've got some really great participants in the panel as well, and some real thought-provoking and experience-led responses and questions for that as well. So for me, building a prevention-first approach really helps us better understand our threats. And it's for us, it's an evolution from moving from reaction first to being preventative, which means we can better prioritize our work and we can better drive down cybersecurity risk. But that's my perspective. Today we've got some great members of the panel, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves to each other. So first I'd like to throw to Osmar to introduce himself.
Thank you, Nathan. My name is Osmar Couto. I work as a principal OT cybersecurity SME with Worley. Worley is a global engineering company that does design and construction for the resource, chemical, and now renewables engineering. And I'm also a PhD candidate with Edith Cowan University in Perth, Western Australia. My major is in cybersecurity, and I'm researching the application of machine learning in SCADA systems. And before we start, as a disclaimer, I want to say that all views and opinions presented here are my own and do not represent Worley's positions and opinions. Thank you.
Thank you, Osmar, for your introduction. I'll now throw over to Aaron to introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. My name is Aaron McKeown. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at Vector Limited, based in Auckland here in New Zealand. My role as Chief Information Security Officer encompasses all 7 of Vector's business units. So we operate business units across gas, fibre, electricity, metering, as well as a number of retail business units. We also provide cybersecurity services to other energy industry participants. So that's a very important role here for what I'm doing with Vector, and really excited to be talking on this panel. So thank you.
Thank you for your introduction, Aaron. I'll now give Adnan the opportunity to introduce himself.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Adnan Alawneh. I am working for Verve Industrial for the 2nd year right now, in the capacity of OT cybersecurity strategist and general manager for the MENAT region. I'm happy to be here today. Before that, I was working for many years in helping clients in securing their OT environment, and I have a good background about turbo machinery and condition monitoring solutions, being working in GE for more than 10 years in the past. Happy to be here today.
Great, thank you for your introduction. We'll get into the discussion now, everyone. So if I could, I want to put it out there, a question really around, trying to put some meat on the bones of what this really looks like. So maybe I might ask you to start off with this one, Osmar. Like, what does a proactive prevention-based security posture to cybersecurity look like in practice for you?
To me, Nathan, we're talking about critical infrastructure, and I think there are a lot of concerns with safety as much as keeping the system working. And I think the best thing to do first is understanding and know your environment. Critical infrastructure is not your regular IT environment. You're dealing with a cyber physical system. You have human interacting with machines and interacting with the cyber environment. Okay, so you need to understand that maybe a mistake or a hacking or a disruption in operation can actually cause not just financial loss, but can also cause a fatality or accident, can affect, life. So the first thing, that people need to think about is how I'm going to do, my infrastructure safe, secure and make the system safe. And if you look into IT, which is more, that CIA, paradigm, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When you look in OT, in critical infrastructure, we are looking more on the safety and availability, so safety first, availability afterwards. So your infrastructure needs to be running, almost 100% of the time, so you need to know, for the beginning of your journey in cybersecurity, I think in your infrastructure, look around and say, do I know my infrastructure? Do I know all my assets? So asset management, to me would be the first thing to think about it. And then you need to, to train every single, plan you have in your disaster recovery. You know what I mean? So you need to test them. You need to understand them. If you think around the world, firefighters, they train every day, every week, when they go to, to fight fires. So why not training, your own system? You keep changing resources, internal resources, you keep changing your plant. So is your, disaster recovery plan is still in place or is still, feasible? So it's good to test that, so doing a simple backup restore exercise, to know, for example, if your plant is going to be back to the business as usual operational model, could save you days if something happens, if you have a malware, okay, I need to, reset everything, wipe out and start from the beginning. Oops, my backup's not working. So you don't wanna have that. The second thing I would do is, really separate my cybersecurity resource from my other tasks. So what you don't want is having network engineers doing cybersecurity, or having help desk, people doing cybersecurity, because they will be always caught in the middle, of both tasks. They won't know which one give priority, so if you can, get someone, or get a team allocated to do cybersecurity tasks, they will find things, that you never knew, that you are not concerned about it. And the last thing I think it will help a lot is starting in thinking on horizontal segregation of your infrastructure, not just the normal Purdue model, with vertical segregation, but also horizontal, because you need to think about internal threats. Everybody thinks that it's always external coming in, but disgruntled employees' mistakes, could have a horizontal spread your network, like legacy networks where you have this layer 2 network, all across the entire site, and affects from the simple machine to the most expensive one or the most dangerous one, so one mistake made in that network, you could stop, everything. So I would say that those are the steps that I'll look, into improving. And if you can improve that, understand that, and learn that, you can, be proactive and not reactive. Thank you.
Thank you for those reflections, Osmar. I think that I really like your test as a verification of a control set and a management control, and that does build a more of a proactive capability that you are prepared and planned. Aaron, do you have anything, any reflections you could add onto that?
Yeah, like Osmar was talking about understanding and knowing the environment, and that's incredibly important. And one of the things that we really spend a lot of time on in terms of security inside our environments is the idea of vulnerability assessment and sort of threat modeling. I would say that vulnerability assessment and threat modeling is something that we bake into all of our projects and deployments, and we do quite regularly, because that increases that level of understanding of the environment. And really, it then starts to do another thing, which is it brings the operators of this technology, or the people that are integrating with the people that are engaging with this technology, along a journey of really starting to think about things in a real risk-based way, I suppose. That's the first thing. So understanding and knowing more about the environment really has to tie in with vulnerability assessment and threat modeling. But then also, I put this entire proactive prevention-based sort of security down to the idea of moving away from thinking about detect to thinking about protect and respond, I suppose. So, you know, if we talk about identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover, we're moving away from detect and we're thinking more about protective solutions and responsive solutions. And that's where, as Osmar was talking about, having visibility across your environment, having teams in place is incredibly important. But most important is having run books that are there ready to go whenever these types of scenarios or incidents, what have you, do occur. Having run books in place is critically important, because if you've got protective controls in place, you need to be able to know what to do when these incidents occur. So that's really, really important as well.
Yeah, I agree with you again with that sentiment of knowing part or almost all of what you do on that bad day, and that actually being a proactive approach. Traditionally, you might have thought of an incident response plan as, oh, well, this is what I'll do when it happens. We'll park it, we'll leave it there. But actually doing that practice part of it actually builds that ability to be proactive and to move along with change, shift along with the changing of the threat as well. So really good points there as well. Thank you. Thank you. And Adnan, I'd like to start involving you in the conversation now as well, but I'm probably going to ask something that's a little bit more specific to your skills and knowledge there. So could you maybe give our audience a little bit of an understanding on your perspective of how to move beyond the limitations of network anomaly detection and that kind of passive approach that is to enable prevention and protection from cyber threats, and overall your thoughts on how to increase OT cybersecurity efficiency using those methods?
Sure. Thanks, Nathan. And I would like to, before I start this point, also to add a little bit of addition on what Aaron and Osmar mentioned as well regarding the importance of having the visibility, because as we all know, we cannot really protect what we cannot see. So visibility first is really important. So to have this deep visibility, it will enable us to be ready for the next steps in case of any incident is happening. So we have our playbooks ready for reactions and response against the attack, because it's a matter of when you are going to be compromised. It's not about if you are going to be compromised or not. So being ready is always the rule, and you have to have your response ready and your systems, platforms for securing your assets. Playbook is ready, and to take it to the maximum level of benefits. So back to your point, Nathan, about the limitations of network-based anomaly detection solutions that are available mostly in the market for securing OT environments. And this limitation is coming from the fact that most of the OT environments are not as ready as the IT environment. IT is having a lot of defense in depth solutions, and ready can be, there's a lot of tools that are available there for incident response that can be applied. But when it comes to OT environment, the story is a little bit different, and the environment is different. The install base is a little bit old and very fragile, very sensitive. There is non-operating system based machines are there, embedded devices are there. If you cannot really mess with them, you cannot upgrade them, or even just send commands to test, or any of the tools that is being used in the IT is not applicable on the OT. It won't be good. So one of the most important limitations for the network-based anomaly detection solutions is the inability to give a deep visibility. And this is where I started from. Visibility is a key here. And when I talk about visibility, it's not about having a list of the assets that I have in an Excel sheet. No, it's much more deeper than that. It's about having like a dynamic updates about what's going on with my assets. I have to see my assets from different aspects, from hardware point of view, software point of view, what is installed them, what on them, what are the applications are running, who is accessing them. I mean, at this point of time, what are the adjacent systems on them, if there is any other security tools that have been installed on them, if there is any patching needs, vulnerability point of view, being ready to, let's say, manage those assets from different aspects, from users access, from also some other applications that being used on them. So to have a deep multi-dimensional visibility about them in order to be able to take informed decisions about them. So having said that, means that the passive, what I call it passive, or mostly they call it passive, which is the network-based anomaly detection, is not really enough. It will give a good visibility, but this visibility will be limited with whatever you see in the network only. What about if there is some traffic that is not being there in the network? Like if there is any east-west communication between some of the embedded devices in the down layers that is not being captured, for example, for the spanning port of that switch that we're taking from a traffic and making the packet inspection. In that case, we definitely will not be able to see that. What about if there is any of those assets are not communicating for some reason, because maybe it is not based on the process, is not the time to communicate, so I will not be able to see any traffic from that. What about if there is any dormant accounts? Means that some accounts have been created on those assets in the past for some reason, okay, for some good valid reason, but those accounts no more is used, and the vendor who made this services for these accounts, they forgot to delete them or to remove. And this is the case. This is what we have been seeing in the market a lot with big names of big customers, big clients. There is a lot of dormant accounts. Yes, they are not sending anything on the network, but this is a big vulnerability that can be executed at any point of time. Can the network-based anomaly detection know anything about those accounts? Of course not. They will not be able to see them. But if you have a different approach solution, like, for example, the host-based anomaly detection and response solution, a comprehensive, complete security program, then this will definitely will help, because you can see those accounts, you can see the assets from deeply multidimensional, let's say, view. You can take actions. I mean, within the same platform, it's about remediations. Those anomaly detection-based solutions, the market will not be able to do any actions for you. It will just give you an alarms or alerts about some anomalies based on what they see in the network, based on the baseline that they made, right? But if there is anything to be taken, any action, they will just integrate with the SIM solution or the firewall to do some actions. So the time to remediations will be definitely not that best, right? But if you have one single platform that will be able to give you all this visibility and actionability at the same time with this deep multi-dimensional view about the asset, then definitely you will be able to do some good informed decisions and actions accordingly. So this is my addition. I have a lot to say about it, but I will keep the space for you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to discuss about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Adnan. I think that your focus on the host in OT environments is really important, and that it is more than just traffic that's occurring after a potential compromise. There's going to be things that happen on a host that you need to take care of first. So I guess in trying to layer on upon what you've said there, I'd like to just get some more commentary from you, Osmar, around what role can artificial intelligence, machine learning, and automation play in that prevention first approach, and using some of those techniques of going past network and to host as well. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Nathan, I could talk in all days about AI, machine learning, in terms of applications in automation, and then also in prevention first, because the AIs they will help you just for one simple fact: they can run 24/7. We cannot. We are trying to protect infrastructures, from 8 to 5, or some of us from 6 to 10 p.m., but not 24/7. So if something happens, while you're sleeping or eating or doing something else, who's going to see it? And seconds, minutes could make a difference between, a localized attack to a spread wide, branches and everything. And you can't see it and you can't detect it, so you need something, to do that for you. And so that's, I think, is the first thought that comes to mind, is the role, for AI and machine learning. And I think the best thing that AIs can do is creating or finding patterns. So sometimes you can't see it, and the AI can see it, can put together, can identify, can concatenate information, and can create clusters, and then from that, bunch of data, disorganized data, not classified data, then creates, a pattern and say, something's happening here. You should look into this, and the fact that sometimes you have, like Adnan said, collect information from devices, or from traffic and everything. How can you ingest all that information? We know that some vendors, they have their own analytics, for their own devices. But when you talk to them and say, okay, can you ingest from a different vendor? They say, oh no, we look after our own device. I said, okay, so now it's my job in, understanding information from your brand, that brand, that brand. So you, as a human being, as a cybersecurity SME, look into, a vendor agnostic, infrastructure, because that's how you should look into that. You actually have sectors, or domains based on brands. And then you have to have like 10, 20, monitors in front of you looking different solutions. So who is doing the ingestion of all that information? Your brain. Mm-hmm. So why not use an AI to do that? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you can start now with simple things. You can just get, data sets or database from different applications and start to correlate things. Imagine, for example, you have a data set from physical security like access cards, okay? And then you put together your data set from your network. And then you have someone, coming and using a swipe card in, I don't know, in an office in South Africa. And then you look at the network and say, well, this login is showing that he's connected to the local network in Australia. I said, well, hang on, is he in South Africa or he's in Australia? You know what I mean? The AI can put that together, can say, oh, there's an anomaly here, and it's not a traffic anomaly. It's like, a behavior anomaly, it's abnormal behavior. Said, well, the guy is there physically, but he's here. Is he connecting through the VPN? Let's check. No, he's not, so you start to understand how people are, interacting with your infrastructure, and also, how your plant, is working. So this is very interesting, and it's really hard, for a human being to sit and start to put things together. So when you start to run, AIs in different levels or in different data sets, you start to learn things as well, because those patterns, those clustering, and then you start to look and say, hang on, I never saw this before. You can use the AI even to, collect, for example, you install your Wireshark in a network, collect a bunch of, caps, and you start to look and say, okay, let's first get all the protocols, see from where to where. If you can do this, AI can do that as well for you. And say, you told me that you don't have remote desktop from A to B, but here you go. This guy is doing every day. What's happening there? You know what I mean? So I think integrating databases, like I said, physical security with, logical access with, time of the day, time zones or whatever, it's a beginning, that you can use AI for, machine learning, whatever, you want to call it, depends on the level of development. And also it's going to teach you things, it's going to show you things, coming back to, knowing your infrastructure, or asset management or inventory, it's going to, teach you things that you probably didn't know about your infrastructure. That's my point of view.
That's a fantastic point of view, and some really good points there around how these more modern technologies like machine learning can really help us identify normal, which allows us to identify abnormal. So in that, you're talking about that potentially risky user and risky activity. And for us, I'll put on my bit here, is then we automate around that as well. Like, if this is risky, let's just stop it and then investigate. That's where we kind of layer on automation into risky as well. You got any thoughts on that, Aaron, and how you might use that where you are?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts, because I guess I'm completely in agreement that, security operations or security monitoring is a 24/7, responsibility. It's not an 8/5 or a 6/10 or, it's a 24/7. But what makes it easier is security orchestration, automation, and response technology. So identifying these key scenarios, creating automated runbooks like the ones that we talked about just now, and making sure that we have the automated processes in place to automatically, shut down firewall ports, disable users, those sorts of things immediately when these types of activities are identified. It's critically important, especially in this age where we seem to have more and more systems being deployed. Networks are getting larger and larger, but teams sometimes are getting smaller and smaller, as our budgets sometimes. So we really have to be working smarter, and the way to work smarter is through, building out runbooks, building out automation, and actually having the machines do it for us, I suppose. Yep. It's incredibly important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to throw to our first audience question, and we have Fareed, who's asked us, what are some of the OT vulnerability assessment applications that can be used to scan for vulnerabilities? Would somebody like to give that a go?
He's asking about some application solution for OT vulnerabilities. This is the question?
Yeah, this is a question, yes, from the audience.
Yeah, I can take this question. Of course, there is some, there are many tools out there in the market, but if I wanted to be a little bit biased here, and I can definitely recommend Verve, because Verve platform is a complete security program that will not be only taking care of vulnerability management. I'm not talking about vulnerability assessment here. I'm talking about full vulnerability management solution that will be able to take care of the vulnerabilities from all the systems across the plant's installation. As we know, all the plants have many installed base from different vendors, as mentioned by Osmar before. So this is a reality. So we wanted to have one vendor agnostic to take care of the vulnerabilities, from managing them, batching them, stuff like that. So Verve solution is really having the full capabilities of managing the vulnerabilities, managing the patches, and managing user access as well, and some much more remediations action as well.
So can I, Nathan, if I can answer as well? I think, the answer to the question is, choose your own solution. You choose which one which fits your requirements and your budget, but the most important thing is to make sure you have a vulnerability management program, or a vulnerability management policy, or a vulnerability management standard in place before you even go down the path of tool selection. It's incredibly important, first from the perspective of understanding what the scope of the security team's responsibilities are, but then it's important from the perspective of being able to communicate to the rest of the organization what their responsibilities are in regards to remediating those vulnerabilities, what escalation processes will occur, and how reporting of those vulnerabilities will then go up to higher levels inside the organization. So my number one recommendation is make sure you have a standard, a policy, or some sort of program in place first before you even start down the path of tool selection.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron. If you don't know where you are, how can you achieve or reach, any other level, so knowing first your, security maturity level, understanding your network and understanding what kind of program you want to develop, and then from there you say, okay, I'm here and I want to get to point C. So what I'm going to do about it, because at the end of the day, a lot of people talk about buzzwords and techniques like, blue team, red team. They talk about pen testing, vulnerability assessment. But at the end of the day, would you hire a consultant, security consultant, to check your home security if you don't have a lock on the front door? So you're not secured. Why would you hire someone? Why would you try to do something, to assess your security if you have nothing? So first work, understand your network or your infrastructure, understand what could happen, if it's some vulnerability is or would be, exploited, and then work from there. And then you say, okay, now I want to go to the market and find out how people can help me, to manage the vulnerability. Like Aaron said, without a vulnerability management, vulnerability is not something that's punctual. I'm going to do today vulnerability assessment. Hey, done. Check in a box. I'm going home, and I'm safe. I'm secure. It's not like that. It's a planned lifetime. To do the work. That's my thinking. Thank you.
And they're great reflections from everybody. But yeah, having experienced it, having a management group that's responsible, knowing who you're going to report to and how you're going to prioritize, really important to have as part of having a piece of software that tells you that there's 25 critical high-risk vulnerabilities with a device. So, Aaron, I'd like to get your perspective on probably more around a topic that gets spoken about a lot, but probably not about the how, is the concept of convergence, IT, OT convergence, and cloud transformation as well, and how how it impacts the security approach for industrial control system OT environments. And I know you've got a lot of great experience in that, so I think that provide plenty of great experience to the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. That's a fantastic topic and one of my favorite ones to be talking about. So I guess if we take those two things, IT, OT convergence and cloud, the first thing is I would probably say to you, when it comes to cloud, it's really about risks and opportunities. Cloud inside industrial control systems isn't all risks and it's not all opportunities, it's both. And we can talk about that in a moment. But first, IT, OT convergence is a great topic because I think that realistically, the line between what is IT and what is OT is becoming increasingly blurred. And I know that it's a somewhat controversial thing to say, but in our organization, for example, we have this view of unified IT, OT security operations, which basically means we use one set of security personnel, one set of tools, one team to provide security services across both our IT and our OT environments. And that's incredibly important. Why? Because typically we feel that an attack on our OT infrastructure is most likely to come from either the IT environment or those people operating inside the IT environment who are subsequently operating inside the OT environment as well. And so this blurring or this convergence is forcing people that would traditionally not think of themselves as IT professionals to become, what I would consider digital citizens, I suppose. And if they become digital citizens, it means that the people that are working, for example, in the electricity part of our business, all of a sudden are, these digital citizens, they need to start thinking about security. In our organization, security is something that our CEO talks about in the same way that he talks about safety. And that's incredibly important. It makes my job as the CISO much easier because he sends a message that security is, up there with safety. And that makes my life easier and it makes my team's job much easier, but it also helps instill amongst the IT and OT teams that, they have this security responsibility. And so it means that even though people are used to operating in their corporate platforms with their corporate systems, they know that when they transfer over into the OT world and they're working on the OT systems, they're sometimes bringing some of that footprint with them. And so they have to have the same tools, technologies, processes, but also the same view about security when they take it with them. So that's sort of the first point, that convergence and the transformation that's causing inside organizations. But when it comes to cloud, it's all back to risks and opportunities. And for us as an organization, we've been on a journey transforming parts of our OT environment to be running on public cloud infrastructure. And that's been incredibly exciting, because whilst we've had to spend quite a lot of time building defense in-depth systems, as some of the other speakers talked about, for cloud, we're also able to take the opportunity of having now access to faster, cheaper types of security platforms that only the cloud can bring, where we receive more visibility, more metrics, more telemetry, more automation. And so some of these long-standing benefits and learnings from IT world are now being transferred into that OT platform. And it hasn't been without some challenges, to be honest with you, especially bringing some of our partners on that journey. But it's opening up new opportunities and new ways for us to think about cybersecurity and think about that unified visibility, that unified protect, that unified detect across our entire environment. So risks and opportunities.
Fantastic perspective, Aaron. I can only imagine the challenge you've gone through, but you've got it across the line, which is a credit to yourself and the teams around you. Getting some of those environments in the cloud is almost a dream for a lot of organizations, and you've done it so fantastic. I really like the point around, like, there's a lot of great that can come of this as well. Like,
That's
yes,
exactly
there is
right.
risk, but you can actually get greater access to technologies that are more accessible and more frequently available in cloud environments than they are for traditionally data center on sites.
Exactly, Nathan. And one of the things we've got to remember is things move so quickly in security land that we need our partners, often who are cloud enabled, to be sending us these, things like updates and IOCs and all those sorts of things. And that's what the cloud brings to us.
Mm.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So.
It's amazing. So I think, Osmar, you can maybe give us a little bit more context to this, and maybe in more of the enable in the beginning phase on how you can do a little bit more around mitigating security vulnerabilities of cyber physical systems, those converged systems, earlier in the project delivery phases.
Yeah, Nathan, and I always like to say that if you want to change something for the future, you need to change from the start, and I think the only way to changing, the cybersecurity, I would say, landscape, on the future is starting taking care of cybersecurity during, the project phase, the project delivery phase. And I think that, coming back what I said, we're talking about a cyber physical systems, for the critical infrastructure. You're providing a service, you're providing a product, or you're providing some kind of a primary requirement, like power, water. So you need to think this will affect people, So like I said, safety first, and then you go for the viability and integrity, of your plant. And you could think, I say, okay, hang on, why am I fixing things now? Why people didn't think about this, when they did the design, why when they were on the study phase, they didn't think, said, okay, about these hazards that happens during the operation, why don't I do this, to prevent that happen, So when you're looking in the engineering design, of power plants, process plants, you have two types of, projects. Basically, we call them greenfield, when it's a new plant, something totally new, and brownfield when you're expanding a plant or you're creating some modifications, and having other sets attached to that, and remember that when you're attaching something, you're bringing vulnerabilities, to that part that you're attaching, or you're actually bringing legacy vulnerabilities from where you're attaching to, to your new plant. So you think, oh, I'm designing this is bulletproof. Yeah, but hang on, I'm connecting to this dial-up remote connection for maintenance to this vendor. Oh, okay. Why? Oh, because they only do that. They are vendors in the last 50 years, so they only do that. They didn't progress. I said, okay, that's a problem. So, things like this. And I would like to say that, if you start, in the design phase, and also in the study phase, you can identify, these points. If you think in a different aspect, saying, okay, I want to have this plant when it's finished and delivered to be in this security maturity level X. Okay, so what I need to do to comply with that? Well, I need to have this. Okay, how can I implement this from the beginning? Okay, yes, I need to have a budget. I need to make people in the project understand that cybersecurity is a discipline, like mechanic, like structural, like electrical, that needs to be looked after, and saying, do we have money to do this? Do we have a budget? Do we have a timeline? Do we have research to design this? Okay, so I think in terms of project, design execution, coming from the study, there are a few, areas, what I call, checkpoints, phases or deliverables that you want to produce or you want to look after to, to create awareness, to prepare the project team to understand, what's coming in terms of cybersecurity. So starting from, the study phase part, like I said, when you're doing your first HAZOps, how to call hazards operational analysis, and you say, okay, this could, fall to a safe position, yes, but creates disruption. Disruption could create loss of reputation. Loss of reputation creates what? Loss of price and shares in stock. People start to think, oh, maybe this is not trustworthy. So you don't want that to happen. So even if you don't have a fatality, you could have loss of money and loss of reputation. So you don't want a disruption to happen. If it happens, you want it to be solved quickly and fix it. And because of all of this, some of the standards, I'm talking about Australian standards like 61508 and 61511, which are functional safety standards. They also were supplemented by a report which is called TR84 17 that talks about cybersecurity related to the functional safety life cycle. So people now understand that they need to look, the impact of cybersecurity in the functional safety life cycle. This is really important, and a lot of people don't know that. They need to start looking at that when they are doing the studies. And after that, I would talk about project policies and procedures. Because you need to write them from the beginning. You need to tell people what's going to happen during the execution phase, during the construction phase, during the commissioning, how people are going to go to site to construct things. Bring your own device. Yeah, that's great, but who's managing that? Who's controlling that? And so you could have, I don't know, maybe 10 people, but you could have 200. How are you going to control that? How are you going to avoid that someone's connected to the internet, listening music, and also changing the firmware of your PLC? You don't want that. So in the same token, you could have the same problem during the project phase, So not controlling passwords, not having identity management, not having protection of the client's data. This is another problem. And that's in the office, so you don't want people talking about your client's problem, or your client's design with somebody else, so policies and procedures are a project life cycle, from the beginning to the end, and people need to understand that. And like Aaron said, several times, risk assessment and risk management, so risk assessment starts from like I said, the HAZOP, from the study, and goes all the way through until you deliver it, the new infrastructure to the client, and say, we knew this, we mitigate that, this is the residual risk. Do you accept that? Yes, I do. There's nothing else to do. No, I don't. We need to do something else, so that triggers, another phase on the project, which is mitigating further, the risk. And mitigating further sometimes could take you a long time or to a dead end, and at the end, the client will have to accept or change the entire design, so you need to understand that from the beginning. The other thing I also like to do is awareness workshop. Talk to the several different disciplines about cybersecurity, not just for them to understand what you're doing, but also for them to see how that could affect or be applied to their own area. Sometimes, talk to engineers and said, oh, no, I'm doing civil design. So what do I have to do with this? I said, I don't know. When you go to site, what do you want to do with your mobile phone? What do you do with your laptop? So it could be a problem. Client's integration requirements compliance. Do I really understand what my client wants? What my client's expectation is, when the plant is delivered. He wants, maturity level 300,000. It's not going to happen, and it's better you tell them now than tell them when you finish, So this compliance with client standards is important. You don't want to just pull something from the market and say, yeah, just use this, or from the industry say, this is the best practice. And the client's going to say, no, I'm already using that. So we need to change to that. One very polemic topic is, operational system and firmware management, which is called, roughly patch management, but also it's from the beginning, if the infrastructure is not going to accept, because you need to have a, SLA, close to 100%, I can't apply, firmware management, firmware change or operational system change. What I'm going to do, understand that. And something that it doesn't happen quite often, it's including cybersecurity tests, in the life cycle of the process control system tests. In generally, process control system, they have the FAT, which is the factory acceptance test, the SAT, that's when you're on site, you test the system, and the IST, which is the integration system test. So you can have a cybersecurity test of your infrastructure together. Why don't do that? Why you're wasting the opportunity to understand what's happening, and test, vulnerabilities or test, pen testing in specific areas. You could use that, and I would like to say two things about, vulnerability assessment and penetration tests during the, the design phase or commissioning phase of the project. I think vulnerability assessment should be done by a third party, to avoid bias from the designer, and I would say that the vulnerability assessment could be done by the design engineering company, as long as at least the penetration test is done by a third party, okay? Because you need to have an independent assessment, not just to avoid, the bias that will happen, but because the design, and sometimes you get blind, between the lines, because already what's happening there. But the question is, do you actually know? So these are, the steps or checkpoints that I will look into, implementing, during the design phase, and understand that cybersecurity is a discipline. It's not something that comes attached to other things. You need to look at it as a full-blown discipline that needs to be taken care of from the study phase to the delivery phase. Thank you.
I think there's some great additions to existing methodologies that you've highlighted there. I think your points around how do you integrate into existing processes, that hazards-based approach is
yes,
really good. So I thank you for your observations there, and then the tips you've given to our audience. So we're going to take one more audience question before we finish up on our panel. So thank you, everybody. And there is a question around what sort of password framework works best for OT assets. Does anybody want to try and offer a view on that?
Sure. I can take that one, and I think my simple answer is a well understood, documented, and communicated password management framework is best used for OT assets. So choose your own framework, but make sure it's documented, it's regularly reviewed, and make sure it's well understood and communicated to the rest of your organization. That's the most important thing. So how I look at it.
Yeah, I think password management has everything to do also with how you do your identity management, you know, and the systems that you have in your infrastructure, you know. So sometimes, or I would say for a long time, you know, people use it, you know, like Adnan said, Active Directory, you know, to control, you know, access. And I would say that today you have different levels of identity management, you know, and access control. Usually we try to use a lot of different systems, and besides having a user to log in a machine, you also have the user, you know, for that specific system, which adds another level, you know, of intrinsicacy, because you want to separate them. And controlling or managing all passwords for all users, you know, for all of that, you know, it's not an easy task. You know, I would first look into, like I said, your infrastructure, know that, and say what would work best. You know, there are a lot of vendors, you know, providing vaults, you know, for passwords, but where you're going to keep them and the extent of keeping them, because, you know, you have an employee today or contractor today just left. What do you do? Do you go there and change all the passwords? You know, or you change on the password to access the vault? You know, so
there's a lot of challenges with the ongoing operation management, but as Aaron said, have a great process, communicate it well, make sure people are engaging with it, and know where your gaps are. So look, we you know, we're the last 30 seconds of our panel, so we have the opportunity to move to the lounge after to answer the unanswered questions from our audience. So look, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody on the panel today. We appreciate your opinions, your experience, and your tips to our audience today. And so really, I got a lot out of today around, you know, knowing your environment, taking a risk-based approach, really challenging the norms as well, and showing that there's good to be had of cybersecurity change as well as risk management as well. So again, thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
I wish you the best for the rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks.